Hello everyone, my name is Jackie Harrison and my informative speech is titled Murder and Manslaughter. Now a lot of you guys are probably thinking, is she gonna teach us how to murder someone? No. Actually, I'm going to teach you guys about the differences between murder and manslaughter. Before I researched about this topic, I always thought that the killing of another person was considered murder. But it's completely not. There is murder in the first degree, second degree, voluntary manslaughter, involuntary manslaughter, and I'm hoping by the end of this speech, you guys will know the difference between murder and manslaughter. Now, what really sparked my attention is actually being married to a police officer. I've been married to him for 5 years, and just knowing what he works with every day really caught my attention, and I'm hoping that you guys find the same interest I did. The first one I'll go over is first-degree murder. Now, according to the New Mexico state statutes, first-degree murder is the intentional and planned act of killing another person. Now, according to Milbrandt, you can also remember first-degree murder as malice aforethought. And malice aforethought basically means the intent to kill someone or cause great bodily harm. A good example of first-degree murder would be, let's just say a guy got fired from his job. He went to Walmart one day, bought a firearm, and 2 days later he waited for his boss in a parking garage, and then he ends up killing him. This would be an example of first-degree murder because it's intentional and it's planned. Now, whoever commits a first-degree murder is guilty of a capital felony and can be sentenced to life in prison without parole or the death penalty. Second-degree murder is different from first-degree murder because it's not planned. Second-degree murder, according to New Mexico state statutes, is performing an act that you know can cause strong probability of death or great bodily harm. And according to Milbrandt, you can also remember second-degree murder as reckless abandonment. A good example of second-degree murder is, say you and your friend are racing cars on a public street. You decide in order to beat your friend, you had to run the red light. Well, when you ran that red light, you ended up killing someone. Now, this would be an example of second-degree murder because you intentionally ran that red light knowing that you can cause a strong probability of great bodily harm or death. Whoever commits second-degree murder is guilty of a second-degree felony and can serve up to 15 years in prison and a fine up to $12,500. And this is all according to Baldwin. Now I'm going to be going into manslaughter. There's two types: voluntary and involuntary manslaughter. Voluntary manslaughter, I usually like to think of is in the heat of the moment. When a person commits a crime in the heat of passion, this is usually considered voluntary manslaughter. Now, an example of voluntary manslaughter would be a spouse walks into their other spouse committing adultery. In the heat of passion, at that moment, their instinct is to kill the other person that their husband or wife is committing adultery with. Whoever commits voluntary manslaughter is guilty of a third-degree felony and can serve up to 6 years in prison and a fine up to $5,000. So to me, that's not worth it. Involuntary manslaughter, I usually like to think of, according to Milbrandt, as criminally negligent. Let's just say there's a girl texting while she's driving, when obviously we know that that's not right. Well, she ends up looking up when she's texting and driving and sees that she's swerving. Well, she overcorrects herself and ends up hitting oncoming traffic. The car that she hits on oncoming traffic, she ends up killing the person. This would be considered involuntary manslaughter because she didn't intentionally do it, it wasn't planned, it wasn't in the heat of passion, it just happened. A person that commits involuntary manslaughter is guilty of a fourth-degree felony and can serve up to 18 months in prison as well as a $5,000 fine. And this is all according to Baldwin. I'm hoping that you guys have a good idea and understanding of first-degree murder, second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, and involuntary manslaughter. And just knowing this information will not only help you become acquainted with the prosecution of this crime, but it will help you become acquainted with the justice system and the standpoint of the justice system. And it's also super interesting. I mean, I'm hoping you guys found just as much interest in this as I did. At the end of this video, I'll be putting up the points on how you guys can remember first-degree murder, second-degree murder, voluntary manslaughter, and involuntary manslaughter. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks. My informative speech is titled Murder and Manslaughter. A lot of the time I used to think before I knew presentation that you guys grasped manslaughter. Now,